we are with the stock bike, and as you can see it does not have the stock exhaust system on it. So unfortunately Edward, the owner of the bike, who has been very patient with me in allowing me to borrow the bike and develop this exhaust, has already taken possession of his stock exhaust. So once all of the stock exhaust is removed, and I recommend that you put in a piece of cardboard in front of the, or actually behind the radiator, just to protect the fins. And we've also removed this mounting bolt from the oil cooler so that you're able to pull the radiator and oil cooler forwards to give you better access for removing the exhaust. So now I'd just like to give you some insight into removing the bodywork. And actually I thought it would be better to show you the actual panel and how it fits, so that will make it easier for you to actually take it off. And the key points are these two pins here, 1 and 2, and these pins push in to these rubber grommets, one here and one here, and these actually retain the bodywork. So when you remove the bodywork, you remove the fasteners, but then you must also pull the bodywork away and get the pins to come out of these two locations. So now you know how the bodywork is mounted. I've put it back on and I'll show you taking it off, but before I do that I thought I'd describe these plastic pins that are used. So on the bike we have this style, which has a large head, and to remove this you need to put a screwdriver in the edge and then pull the pin up, and then once it looks like this you can grab the outer edge and pull it out. The second style is like this, and this is how it is mounted in the edge, mounted in the bike. And for this you push in the center pin like that, push it in, then grab the outer edge, pull it out, but before you reinstall it you need to push the pin out, so it's pushed out, and then once it's installed push the pin in and it will look like that. Now the larger of the plastic rivets, the big one, that's mounted here on this oil cooler shroud, so you pull that one out, and then these smaller ones, there are two of them. One is located here on the inner panel, and then the second one is up here on the inner panel. So the first thing to do is to remove these three plastic pins. Now we'll take the panel off. There are 4 mounting bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first thing is remove these bolts. And of course the other two are a different size. Get another different size. This one out. 3 and 4. Now we have the bolts out. You'll remember the pegs on the inside. We need to pull the panel out and release the pegs. There's the back one, there's the front one, and as you can see it comes out. So it will need to be released from the belly pad from the other side down here, and you'll need to disconnect the turn signals. Removal of the left side panel is the same as the right hand side. The only thing is there is no need to remove this shroud, so this shroud can remain with the left hand side panel. So the first task we're going to do is we're going to mount the spigots onto the engine. So the bell shape goes to the engine. Here I have the headers for cylinders 3 and 4. This is number 4. And we look at the orientation of the bowl holes on the cylinder head, and it's twisted like that. Therefore, we want to mount the spring in this hole here. And I recommend mounting the springs first because it's a lot easier. You can take my word for it, it's a lot easier to do at this stage. So, I've got the spring on, and now we reuse the stock seal. These are the stock mounting bolts. So we're just gonna, whoops, lost the spring, lost the bolt. So take this up, hold it in place. Make sure it's seated flat. And get the bolt in. And the other side, making sure the spigot remains flat in the cylinder head. And when you come to tighten the bolts, just finger tight right now. So now they're finger tight. I'm going to take the wrench, and what we want to do is we just want to tighten them evenly on each side to keep the spigot flat like that, and then you just want to tighten them firmly but not so much that the flange actually bends. So just keep an eye on it. That feels tight, but the flange remains straight. Okay, so I think they're tight, but I always just go back one more time. Yeah, that's tight. And there we go. So that's mounted. And now you repeat that with the other 3 spigots. Now here we are over on the left-hand side of the bike, and we're going to mount the headers and the muffler together onto the bike at the same time. The first thing you'll notice is that I have removed the mounting bolts for the side stand. So that's just going to lay to one side for now. And when you mount the headers, it's very useful, just to make it easier, just to give the slip joints a little bit of light oil, just to ease the assembly. So here's the muffler, and here's the header, cylinders 3 and 4. So we're just going to mount those on, and here's 1 and 2. Those in, and then just line up the spring tabs, but don't put the springs on at this moment. And then we'll just put a bit of light oil slip joint of the header. So because of this oil, when you first start up the bike, it's going to burn off. So when you first start the bike up, there'll be a bit of smoke coming out of the exhaust. That's just this oil burning off. We have the headers and muffler in one piece. We're now going to slide it low down into the center of the bike, like that. And then you just need to make sure that the oil cooler bracket is between cylinders 3 and 4. Then you can lift the headers up towards the engine. Now, at this point, you want to make sure that the springs do not go inside the header tubes. We've already got the springs on. and I'm just going to get a probe just to pull the springs away from the header tubes as I lift it up. So here we're just pulling the springs away from the header tubes as it goes up, and then you want to do the same on the other side. So over on the right hand side I've got the 3 and 4 cylinder headers just over the spigots, and they're just sitting on the ends there. The 1 and 2 cylinders are not engaged at this point. And now I'm just going to attach the spring onto the number 4 header just to hold it in position. And then go back onto the left hand side and put cylinders 1 and 2 onto the spigots. Okay, back to the left hand side, and now I'm going to get these onto the spigots. There we go, that's up. And unfortunately this number 1 spring fell off. It happens. Get that on and then use the puller again. Get this spring on. Okay, so the headers are now on, and we want to put on the springs for the 2 and 3 cylinders, and then we can come back and put the springs on for the muffler to the headers on both sides. So there you can see, fits in there. Now we have the headers and muffler in place, we can remove the cardboard and then replace the bolt for the oil cooler. And don't forget, this is on both sides. And if you do not have the FT flash for your ECU, you would want to replace the stock O2 sensor in the bung on the headers. Okay, included in the kit we have a left-hand muffler mounting bracket, 2 longer bolts and 2 spacers, and we're going to use these to put the side stand back on again. So first of all, I'm going to put the bolts through the side stand, then the spacers, and then the bracket with the L facing in towards the center line of the bike. So there we've got the brackets on, and just tighten these bolts. Again, you want to do it step by step so that they're tightened relatively easily and evenly. So they're tight, but I'm just going to go back one more time and check, which is just an old habit from my racing days. So these bolts are tight, and just make sure that the cable for the side stand switch is routed up and away from the exhaust. And while we're here, I'd like to point out here on the headers is a rubber stopper, and this stopper is from the stock headers in the same location, so you need to remove the rubber stopper from your stock pipes and install them into this bracket. Here we have the muffler mounting strap, and it's very important to know that there's a left hand side and a right hand side. They're not equal. So This is the left hand side, and you can see it has a longer mounting tab than the right hand side. So the long tab is on the left and the short tab is on the right. And it's very important to put this the right way around because it positions the muffler on the bike. Now I'm going to slide the strap over the back of the muffler. Slide it down so it lines up with the hole. And then from your kit, this is the left hand trim bracket. So we want to put the bolt through there, and then through the two holes, the washer, the nylock, and now we're just going to tighten this up sufficiently that the bracket can be rotated, because we're going to have to line it up with the trim piece. So there, I can just lift it up and down. So now we'll go over to the right hand side. Here we are on the right hand side of the bike. This is the right hand strap bracket, and you'll notice here this has a longer tab on one side than the other. So the long tab goes to the front and the short tab goes to the back. So we'll take this, and this is the stock bolt from the stock muffler. So we'll put that through the long tab, and then that goes through the stock mounting position, and you just want to position the bracket behind the muffler strap. And then we have the washer and the nylock, finger tight. This is the right hand trim bracket, and you want to take the well nut from the kit, this is the rubber well nut, and push it through the hole in the back of the bracket, and then take the mounting bolt through there. This is the same as the left hand side, so we're going to take this and push it through the hole in the bracket. Those lined up, and then as usual a washer and a nylock. And now we're going to tighten up. First of all, need to go in from the back side. This bolt. So this one you can tighten fully, and then this one we just want to tighten enough so that we can rotate the bracket. So there we go. That's the muffler mounted. It's now time to reinstall the bodywork. So we're over here on the left hand side. Here's the left hand side panel. And a couple of things to note. You'll see this little peg here. This peg needs to go into the plastic shroud at the top of the radiator, and these go underneath the inner panel of the fairing. And lastly, the first thing you need to remember is to reconnect the turn signal. I always forget that myself. So first of all, plug this back into there. Then we're going to bring remember the pegs. So first of all, slide the inner panel in, lining up that peg with the shroud on the radiator. This on the inside. So that's pretty well lined up, and then we're going to push that home. Those panels in, and then the peg in the center. Here we have the mounting bolts, but we're not going to put in the back one at this stage. So leave that one out. So we're just going to put in the 3 bolts to start with. Finally got the thread. Change the wrench, and we'll just check that, yes, it's all seated. We have these 2. And you'll remember our 2 little push pins, so these are ready to be reinserted. Check that the panel is seated, and we have the one down here, and then push the center peg in, and there are 2 up at the top here. See, I actually saved all the bits in a bag, you see, labelled left hand side, so that I know what goes where. Okay, pegs in at the back. There we are. So we'll just put the right hand side on there. Here we are on the right hand side. The only difference here is that we have to get this lower shroud into the mountings at the nose of the fairing. So that's what I'm going to do first, is push this up to the nose. Make sure you push it together. You hear the click? We're in. And remember to connect the turn signal, which I almost forgot. Slipped out, so do it again. That's in. Just line up the top. peg in the center, nice click, and we're ready to put the 3 bolts. Again, not the rear bolt. Two, 3. And finally, we have our 3 plastic pins that are going to go in to the inside. So I'll put this one in first. Push in the center, check everything is fitting. That's the one at the bottom. And there's always a nice satisfying click when it fits. So there we have the bodywork on. Here we have the carbon trim piece, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to slide it inside the stock bodywork, and then at the back have the trim on the inside of the exit. And there you can see it lines up with the back of the bodywork. So put the mounting bolt in. We're going to have to take this off. This is just to check alignment. So again, just finger tight. We have this trim grip U-channel, so we're going to slip this over both the carbon and the stock bodywork. So that holds it in position at the bottom. And then what we're going to check is that there is clearance of the carbon all the way around the muffler exit. There must be no physical contact between the muffler exit and the carbon. And if there is a little bit of contact, you can always the muffler, you can't change the position of the carbon, but you can change the position of the muffler in the strap. So you can just manipulate the exit to give you clearance. So this is looking pretty good. Now we need to line up the bracket on the inside with this little hole so that the well nut is going to, the screw of the well nut will go through there. I'm just using this little pointer which I can push through here, and then from the back get it to go in. And as I mentioned before, you might need to just position the bracket, and this one is a bit high, so I'm just going to take this off and move the bracket down a little bit. So I can get this alignment. You might have to do this a couple of times just to get that position right. I always like, when I'm positioning it, just to make sure that nothing changes. Put that on. And there you can see that's going through the bracket there, so that's in the right position. So we're going to leave that, take it off again, and what we need to do is to tighten up the bolt now. without moving the bracket. So here we are tightening up the bracket, and you can see I'm holding the bracket with the heel of my hand. We've got the wrenches on both sides. So there we are, tightening it up. Now we have the trim bracket in the correct position and the mounting bolt tightened up. For the final time, we'll put the trim piece on behind the muffler, inside the stock bodywork. Get that stock bolt in. The trim grip. And now here we have the little screw that we're going to use to attach the trim bracket to the fiber. So just hold the bracket at the back, and you just want to keep screwing this in till the rubber expands at the back and the screw goes firm. No reason to over tighten it. So this is all in place. One last check. We have clearance around the muffler, and what we're going to do now is we're going to take a pair of pliers and then squeeze the trim grip. This increases the grip so it doesn't fall off. So that's a little trick. Just go in there and give it a good squeeze. Okay, that's the right hand side in place. Now on the left hand side, you take the trim and once again slide it on the inside of the stock bodywork. Take the stock bolt, just screw it in, finger tight. Take the trim grip, grip together the stock bodywork and the carbon. Now we're going to check. Here is the hole. The bracket needs to come down. Just going to use my pointer. There we go. Get it lined up. That's good. Take the trim off. We're going to tighten up this left hand trim bracket. I've got the wrenches on and I'm holding the bracket with my left side, and I'm going to turn the wrench and the nut at the back so that the bracket doesn't move. Put the trim on for the last time, line it up, stock bolt in place, trim grip, and then got the little screw. Actually, I'll just check our alignment. There we go. Screw in. I'm just holding the bracket at the back. A little bit of pressure. Expand the rubber until the screw goes firm, but no need to over tighten. And now finally tighten the stock mounting bolt. We're going to take the pliers and squeeze the trim grip, keep it in position, nice and tight. And there we go. We're all fitted up. So now we'll fire up and see what 192 horsepower sounds like. I hope you enjoy my exhaust kit for your new Suzuki. If you have any questions about fitment, we are at the end of the telephone to help you. Do enjoy it and ride safe out there.